Less than 48 hours ago, we had 5 undefeated teams in college basketball, and now only 3 remain.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Thursday, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. I am your host and longtime college basketball podcaster, Andy Patton, and you are joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Again, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank all of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and of course, give a special shout out to all you everyday listeners and those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Folks, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, we are down to 3. 2 days ago, we had 5 undefeated teams in college basketball. Now, after Iowa State's loss at Kansas, and now Vanderbilt going down on the road to Sean Miller and the Texas Longhorns. We'll talk about that game. Rest of the SEC slate, which included a Christian Laettner-like win for Kentucky. We'll talk about that. A massive comeback for Mark Pope's team and a much-needed one. We also have other great results around the college basketball space, including a stunning upset by Stanford over North Carolina behind their potential All-American freshman guard. We had surviving games from Arizona, from BYU and Michigan. All got some scares, all managed to get the W's. Nice win for Purdue as well. Some multiple buzzer beaters, just an insane jam-packed day of college basketball on Wednesday. We're going to get to all of it. And then we're going to close out the show talking about the other big news of the day. The fact that the transfer portal window has been shifted once again as sanity prevails, a win for common sense with a move to have the transfer portal window open later. We'll talk about that to close out the show. We got to start the show with one of the 5 undefeated teams in college basketball, or 4 undefeated teams in college basketball coming into the day, going down. Number 10, Vanderbilt, the Commodores. We didn't expect that Vandy was going to make it through the SEC unscathed. But I, to be honest, wasn't sure this is the game that they would lose. Shout out Texas, Sean Miller and the Longhorns playing some really good basketball as of late. They win this one 80-64, a very comfortable win for this team. Down to just Arizona, Nebraska, and Miami, Ohio among the 3 undefeated teams. Arizona took a little bit of a scare from their rival Arizona State, but they managed to secure the victory there. We'll talk about that. Vandy was down 5 at half, but they got this thing within 4. It was 55-51 with about 11 and a half minutes to go. From there, Texas just ran away with it. 25-9 run from Texas ended up giving them an 80-60 lead with a few minutes to go. It was on a Kendall Weaver alley-oop that ended up giving them that 20-point lead. It was Vokatitis. Tremendous game for him for Texas. He had 22 points, 7 boards. He was 7 of 9 from the field, including 8 of 9 from the free throw line. Really good stuff from Texas. The Longhorns, Tremont Mark, 21 points for him. Also was 4 of 7 from 3. We'll see if they can keep up the momentum for Texas. They started 0-2 in SEC play and then won at Bama, and then beat Vanderbilt here. Not exactly what I would have thought from Texas after their not great start to conference play. After this, they host A&M, then they're on the road at Kentucky before returning home to face Georgia, going back out on the road to take on Auburn and Oklahoma. For Vanderbilt, 36% from 3, not bad, but only 37% on 2-pointers. And really the story for them was just not enough help. Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles combined to score 38 points. Both were fairly efficient in this game, but the rest of the team just didn't do anything. The bench, 7 total points, 2 of 9 shooting for players coming off the bench for this team. Just not enough help from the supporting cast. Texas, like we said, went on that deep run and ran away with this thing. The other big game in the SEC, we got 4 total games in the conference we'll talk about, but we've got to talk about an incredible jaw-dropping comeback from the Kentucky Wildcats, down 18 points in the second half. And it looked like Mark Pope, I mean, we've heard the comments, we've heard the stress. If they started conference play 0-3 with a loss to LSU, I'm not sure what that would have looked like. We would have hit a fever pitch for Big Blue Nation, and instead, they find a way to come all the way back and win this game, and they literally did it on the Christian Laettner play. They inbound. There's 1.6 seconds left following, by the way, an LSU player missing both free throws in the closing seconds. If he'd made them, the game changes if he'd made even one of them, but instead he misses both. It's a 1-point lead for LSU, 1.6 seconds remaining. Colin Chandler throws the ball to three-quarter court. Malachi Moreno catches it, a step inside the free throw line, catch, turn, hits the mid-range jumper, bang, that's ball game. Literally exactly like Christian Laettner winning the national championship for Duke 30-plus years ago. Incredible comeback for Kentucky. They didn't lead this game until there was less than 4 minutes to go in the contest. This is their first game without Jalen Lowe, not of the season, but the first game knowing that he is on the shelf for the entire year. There was a lot of emotion, a lot of energy, and they managed to find a way to come back with a huge deficit and get a W here. Incredible stuff. Agonizing for LSU. LSU is a team that's already been in some close games this year. It was Pablo Thamba who missed the 2 free throws in the final seconds. I thought Otega Owe was going to be the villain in this game as he got called for a shot clock violation with about 40 seconds left. Max McKinnon went to the line, made both for LSU, giving them a 2-point lead. Owe got fouled, only made one of the free throws, and that's what set up Thamba to go to the free throw line, miss both. Then that's how you get the game-winning shot from Malachi Moreno, who had a very good game. This is the kind of game that could get Kentucky into the NCAA tournament. As in, this is the kind of game, had they lost, that might have kept them out. A bubble resume with a loss to LSU and a 1-3 start in conference play might have been enough. But now they get the W here. If they can swing any kind of momentum out of this for Kentucky, that's going to change this. I mean, this could change their season realistically. They're now 2-2 in league play. Next up, it's not an easy slate. They're at Tennessee for their next game. Then they host Texas and Ole Miss. We'll get to Ole Miss in a second. And then they're at Vandy and at Arkansas. So a tough stretch coming up right here, but maybe they can circle the wagons with a little momentum here. For LSU, 4th loss in a row, all in SEC play. They lost to A&M by just 3. They lost to South Carolina by 10. That was an ugly one. Now they lose this game after also losing to Vandy. The key part for LSU, their leading scorer coming into conference play was Deion Thomas. He has been out with an injury since then, so they've been having to try to do this without him, and they haven't had success yet. Other games in the SEC to talk about. Ole Miss gets a much-needed win on the road at Georgia, 97-95. They won this one in overtime on a tip-in from Patton Pinkins. There were multiple game-winning buzzer-beater shots in college basketball. This is the second one we're talking about after Moreno's tip-in. It was an ugly possession, missed the shot. He just kind of flung it up from his hip and managed to get it to bounce into the net to give them a W. A.J. Storr was the star, though, for the Rebels. 27 points on 11 of 22 shooting. Again, like Texas, 0-2 start for Ole Miss in conference play, but they are now 2-2. Next up for them, they're at their rival Mississippi State in Starksville. Then they host Auburn. Then they're at Kentucky, hosting Vandy, and at Texas. For Georgia, great performance from Jeremiah Wilkinson. 32 points for him, 6 of 12 shooting from 3. This is the 3rd overtime game for Georgia this year. They're now 1-2 in overtime games. They beat Auburn in that multiple overtime game to start off conference play. They lost to Clemson in the non-conference. They now also fall to 2-2 in conference play. Next up, hosting Arkansas before going on the road to take on Mizzou. And then only want to make one note on this game. South Carolina went on the road to take on 17 Arkansas. Arkansas bounced back with a very comfortable 108-74 win in this game. Darius Acuff was incredible. We've talked about Darius Acuff a handful of times, having a tremendous freshman season for Coach Cal at this point in that conversation with Kingston Fleming from Houston and Mikal Brown from Louisville when he's healthy. And now Ebuka Okorie, who we will talk about in a second, among the best freshman guards in the country. And obviously when he's playing Darren Peterson. Acuff, 18 points, 13 assists, and 0 turnovers in this game against South Carolina. Absolutely outstanding performance from one of the most fun players in the sport to watch. Speaking of fun freshmen, we got to talk. Ebuka Okorie had an incredible, extraordinary jaw-dropping performance for Stanford in Palo Alto as they took down the 14th ranked Tar Heels. We'll talk about that game, some other results from Wednesday's wild day of college hoops, all that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, there's nothing like college hoops season. There's the madness, the packed arenas, being right in the middle of all of it, the energy, the bands, the moments that you all remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that used to be the most frustrating part. You'd have long queues, you'd have login issues, you'd have prices that jump at checkout. And that's why Game Time gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing tickets in just a few taps. The app is super easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. And their zone deals stand out. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you can save even more cash. Not a lot of great games on Thursday, but Gonzaga at Washington State should be a fun one. Tickets were $77 last week. They're down to $52 now if you want to grab a last-minute ticket to go out to Pullman. So take the guesswork out of buying college tickets by using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you will get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. All right, folks, want to thank all of you for making Locked On College Basketball your first listen or your first watch of the day. And remind you that if you already live your team every day, you can now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On College Basketball with no interruptions, membership-only Discord access, and more for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedoncollegebasketball.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Folks, we got a lot more games to cover from Wednesday night, an epic day in college basketball. We had two ACC teams traveling across the country to take on the West Coast, their West Coast brethren now, as we had Duke go out to Cal and North Carolina go out to Stanford. We're going to start with that game as Stanford stormed back, picked up a huge win, 95-90 over the Tar Heels, thanks to the strength of Ebuka Okorie, who was unbelievable in this game. 36 points. That is a Stanford freshman scoring record. He also had 9 assists and 1 turnover. Just incredible stuff from this young man. It looks effortless. His style, his way of getting to the spots that he wants to get to. He can get all the way downhill. He can pick and pop in the mid-range. He's got a strong outside shot. He's a very good facilitator. This kid is excellent. Truly looks like an All-American caliber player in a league that is so dominated with freshmen. We already talked about Darius Acuff. We've talked a lot about Kingston Fleming. Of course, Darren Peterson and Mikael Brown have gotten all the attention. Those are just the freshmen. And yet Ebuka Okorie is truly in this conversation. It wasn't just him, though. Stanford as a team shot 16 of 28 from three, 57% from the arc. They had a 20-8 assist to turnover ratio compared to 7 and 11 for North Carolina. This is actually Stanford's 4th straight home win over a ranked opponent. Coach Kyle Smith and the Cardinal know how to bring it when they got ranked teams in the house. We'll see if they can keep it up because their next game is against Duke at home as well. Then they host Cal before traveling out to Florida to take on Miami and Florida State. For North Carolina, the offense just went ice cold down the stretch. They had a Seth Trimble field goal at the 4-minute and 18 mark, which gave North Carolina an 85-81 lead. They were then outscored 14-5 down the stretch. They did not have another made field goal until Seth Trimble got a tip in about under 10 seconds to go. That was it. They had a couple of free throws in there. Stanford took a lead at 61 seconds to go. It was their first lead of the game since it was 5-4. Catastrophic loss for North Carolina. Only their 3rd loss on the year, but they are 2-2 in conference play after having lost on the road to SMU. Their other loss being Michigan State. Tough one for the Heels. They're just so reliant on the bigs. Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar, not enough from the guards in this one. They had multiple ugly turnovers in the final few minutes of this basketball game, which helped cost them the game and handed Stanford the W there. Next up, they go over to Cal in Berkeley before returning home to host Notre Dame, and then a road trip against Virginia and Georgia Tech. Looking at some of the close calls that we almost had on Wednesday, Arizona remains one of the 3 undefeated teams in college basketball, but it wasn't exactly an easy one against their rival Arizona State. The Wildcats ultimately win 89-82, but it was far closer than that. This thing was close right up until the final seconds. Arizona State continued to hang around all game long. Noah Musin hit back-to-back threes late in the second half that kept this thing within, I think, 4 or 5 points, but eventually free throws down the stretch and a clutch shot from Jaden Bradley gave the win to the Cats. But really, it was the 2 bigs for Arizona in this one. Koa Pete, first 20-10 game of his prolific freshman season in Arizona, 24 points, 10 boards, 3 assists, 9 of 15 for him. And then Toby Awaka coming off the bench, career high, 25 points for him on 8 of 11 shooting. He was 8 of 8 from the line. He had 5 boards as well. Really nice performance. Jaden Bradley chipped in 12 points, 6 of 15 shooting, not his most efficient night, but he had a clutch mid-range jumper in the final minute when the Wildcats really needed it. They moved to 17-0, and they got a pretty cushy stretch coming up, at least cushy in terms of Big 12 play. They're at Central Florida. That's a long trip for them, and then they're coming back home to host Cincy and West Virginia before going on the road to take on BYU and then Arizona State. That's where things get pretty dicey for Tommy Lloyd and the Cats, but for now, they can enjoy being one of those 3 teams without a loss so far this season. Iowa went on the road to take on Purdue, and this was one of the first games of the day. Iowa, they came close. They were in this thing all along. In fact, they were leading at halftime, built a pretty big lead early in the second half. I think they were up 9 or 11 points early in the second half. And then Braden Smith took over. He had 16 points in this game, all of them coming in the second half. He had a stretch where he scored 8 of the last 12 points for Purdue, took them from being down by, I think they were down 48-39, helped get them to a 53-52 lead with about 9.5 minutes to go. Purdue continued that run and ended up ended up securing a 7-point victory in this one. Nice performance from Braden Smith. Tough one for Iowa. Bennett Sturtz, not his most efficient night. The team shot 7 of 10 from 3 in the first half, but couldn't get it done offensively in the second half of this one. Next up, number 4, Michigan made another cross-country trip, talking a lot about those today as they went out to Seattle to take on the Washington Huskies. Michigan comes away with a 10-point win in a game that was, again, a little bit closer than that. UW hung around for quite a while, but Michigan ends up bouncing back from that loss to Wisconsin to get the win here. Ade Mara, 20 points for him, nearly perfect from the field, 10 of 11. He had 3 blocks. One of them was very clearly a goaltend that did not get called. Danny Sprinkle was losing his mind on the sideline, as was the Seattle crowd, justifiably so, but really strong game from Mara and Michigan's defense. They held UW to under 40% from the field, under 30% from 3, as they have been doing all season long. Sans, of course, that game against Wisconsin. Duke went on the road as well, like we talked about with Carolina going out to Stanford. Duke went out to Cal, ended up getting a 71-56 win. This was closer than the score indicates as well. Duke was up by 7 at half, but Cal ended up getting this thing within 2 points at the under 16 and ended up hanging around for most of the second half until Duke finally went on a little run and put them away. Big part of it was, of course, the play of Cameron Boozer, 21 points, 13 rebounds for him. He shot 9 of 16 from the field. TCU went out to the Marriott Center to take on BYU. This was the last game that finished of the day. And again, very close one. TCU has been doing this. Narrow loss to Michigan. They've had many other very close calls this year in and out of conference play. This was another one. They end up losing by 6. BYU gets the 76-60 victory. TCU is actually up 6 at halftime. They led as many as 9 in the second half of this game before BYU came storming back, got themselves a very gutsy win. AJ DeBansa, 25 points for him. Not his most efficient night, 8 of 22 shooting, only 2 of 7 from 3, but he did go perfect 7 of 7 from the free throw line. Richie Saunders didn't hit his first 3 of the game until about the 45-second mark in the second half, but it was a big clutch 3 to give them a much-needed cushion in the closing seconds here of this one. A couple other results here. Illinois went out to Northwestern, won this one 79-68. I just want to give a shout out to Keaton Wagler. Very, very good freshman for the Illini. 22 points for him. He was 8 of 17, including 3 of 7 from 3. Also had a great performance from JT Toppin at Texas Tech. The 15th ranked Red Raiders hosting the Utah Utes picked up an 88-74 win. JT Toppin had 31 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists, and 5 blocks. He became, according to Jared Burson of ESPN Stats and Info, Toppin became the first player in Division I basketball since 2003 to have a game of 30 or more points, 10 or more rebounds, 7 or more assists, and 5 or more blocks. The last person to do it was Mike Sweetney at Georgetown. So it's been over 22 years since a player put up the stat line that Toppin put up Wednesday against Utah for the Red Raiders. And then the last, but very much not least game to talk about here. Again, we're just talking about a highlight. We're not talking about the whole game, but what an incredible highlight it was. Virginia Tech on the road at SMU. SMU gets a 77-76 win because Boopie Miller hit a 48-foot three-point buzzer beater in this game. 2.5 seconds to go. They were down 2 points. They inbound the ball to Boopie. He takes 2 dribbles, launches it. He is a good full stride behind the half-court mark, and he's on the sideline. That is a long shot. Drills it. SMU gets the home victory over Virginia Tech. Heartbreaking loss for the Hokies, but an incredible shot. Again, we had the goofy tip-in from Patton Pinkins at Ole Miss. We had the Christian Laettner, Malachi Moreno shot for Kentucky. And then we had a 48-foot three-pointer from Boopie Miller, all on the same random Wednesday night in the middle of conference play in college basketball. How can you not love this sport? Incredible stuff in this game. And I cannot wait to continue to cover for the next couple of months before the season ends. And guess what, folks? When the season ends, that is when the transfer portal will open, and it will not open a day sooner. The portal window is shrinking once again. We're going to talk about that, what it means by the D1 Council as they announce this on Wednesday. All that coming up to close out the show, coming up here in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still locked on college basketball. And we're closing out the show with the other big news that came out on Wednesday. The NCAA transfer portal for men's basketball will be shrinking once again, which I mean the window for the amount of time that you are allowed to enter the transfer portal. It started at 45 days and inexplicably, ridiculously opened the day after Selection Sunday. Why they thought that was a good idea, I do not know. All the teams in the NCAA tournament and in various other postseason tournaments, the NIT, etc., were trying to navigate this transfer portal window while also trying to compete and play in these postseason games. The next year they said, well, that wasn't good. We're going to shorten it to 30 days from 45 days, and we're going to have it open after the Sweet 16. Okay, better, but still not great. And now, recent announcement again that came out on Wednesday, the portal window will shrink again from 30 days to 15 days, and it will open up the day after the championship game. Finally, college basketball has figured out that their offseason should start in the offseason. Offseason doesn't start until the game is over. Yeah, I know football doesn't do it that way. Probably should do it that way as well. It's chaos in college football right now. We've seen that. And it was chaos the last 2 years in college basketball with teams trying to navigate, still trying to win the games that they're playing, still trying to navigate keeping their players on the roster, and also having to scout and focus on other players who are in the transfer portal who they may want to bring on, players maybe they've previously recruited out of high school or players that they identified during the season of like, hey, if he becomes available, we're going to like him. Now he's available and we don't want to miss out on contacting him, but we got a game tomorrow, in the Sweet 16 or the round of 32 or whatever it may be. Like, that was not a sustainable model whatsoever. Sanity has prevailed. Players will now have 2 weeks to decide whether they're going to enter the transfer portal. Those 2 weeks will begin the day after the season fully ends. I never understood the argument to do it sooner. I know people like to say, well, some teams, their season ends so early. Like, as somebody who covers the WCC regularly, like, yeah, if you're Pepperdine or one of the not good teams in the WCC and you lose early in that conference tournament, you're done by like March 4th. Like, that's often when those games happen. I don't understand why those players should get why we're saying, well, their season ends so early, they should be able to transfer sooner. Like, that doesn't, just hang out. Your season ends, you're done on March 4th. Now you just wait till April 5th before entering the transfer portal. You can decide ahead of time that you're going to. That's not going to change. We're going to get those announcements. Joe Tipton threw all of those announcements out there last year of like, this player intends to enter the transfer portal. I'm thinking of Mo Odom because I just watched the Arizona State game. Odom basically said he was entering the transfer portal as soon as Pepperdine's season ended, and he ended up transferring to Arizona State, of course. He announced it way before the portal window opened, and that portal window opened in the Sweet 16. So it's not really going to change any of that. It just means that now that you can't officially enter the portal and you only have this 15-day window, it's less strain on these coaches and just more feeling like we're actually finishing the season before we get into the offseason and not having to split our focus as fans, as analysts, as coaches, as anybody, as players, as anybody involved in the sport has to do. A good, positive change the NCAA is making with regards to the transfer portal in college basketball. Other changes that they announced as part of this, the portal window is changing for when head coaching changes happen. And as many of you know, a reminder, players are eligible to enter the transfer portal as soon as if their coach leaves, if their coach gets fired, if their coach decides to take another job, whatever reasoning happens, if their coach is out the door, those players then have 30 days to enter the transfer portal under the previous rules, regardless of when that happened. A reminder on this, like Tony Bennett retired 15 days before the college basketball season started with the hopes of basically preventing Virginia's roster from falling apart. It worked in the sense that the only player who transferred from Virginia was Jalen Worley, who then redshirted at Gonzaga. And we saw this, we've seen this with other coaches too. Bruce Pearl's timing of when he stepped down at Auburn likely limited Auburn players from being able to do the same thing. The new rule is that instead of it being 30 days, it's also reduced to 15 days, except a key difference is that this 15-day period opens 5 days after a new coach is either hired or announced. So if in July, for whatever reason, a coach decides to leave for, maybe they get an NBA job and they decide to leave in the middle of the offseason, those players will then get 15 days where they can choose to enter the transfer portal after that team makes their next hire, so that coach then has an opportunity to come in to re-recruit his own roster to prevent them from leaving without even knowing who the coach is. It gives programs more time. One of the things we've been seeing a lot as coaches, and we're seeing this in football too, obviously with the Lane Kiffin situation, but Jay Lucas left Duke last year before the NCAA tournament run to go coach at Miami because Miami wanted to have a coach in place before the transfer portal window opened. Now, if you're going to lose a coach, you are going to have that time to hire a coach and know that they have a few days where they can try to convince the players still on the roster to stick around before those players then have the option to enter the transfer portal. I'm very curious how much of a difference this will make. I mean, we see programs like Maryland completely overhauling their roster, Villanova's roster dramatically different. And it's happening at programs that are keeping coaches. Scott Drew's whole roster has changed and he didn't go anywhere. So it's not like it's only happening at those programs, but it is a pretty pervasive issue for programs like that. Now, obviously, if you're replacing your coach, a lot of the time your team wasn't very good. Like Miami's probably not too upset that their whole roster pretty much turned over, but I would imagine you're not thrilled about it at Maryland. Maryland lost Kevin Willard. They then lost their entire roster. Buzz Williams didn't get a great opportunity to build a roster. They've been very bad. And I'm not saying that none of that falls on Buzz Williams. It does. Some of it does. He hasn't been very good this year, but that's frustrating for Maryland. And if their coach had an opportunity to come in and keep the players who are already there, maybe that would have been able to happen at a higher clip than it currently is. Again, another positive change for this sport. Going off of this as well, if a program, there is a time limit. I used Miami as an example earlier. That wouldn't have worked in theory because of the timing of when Coach L left, but you have 30 days to hire or announce a coach. If you have not done that, after 30 days, on the 31st day, that transfer portal window will open for 15 days. So if you take your sweet time hiring a coach, most teams are not going to wait that long to hire a coach. But if there is eventually a timeline. These players cannot be held hostage in this situation. So after 30 days, you can enter the transfer portal for 15 days if your program has not made a coaching hire as well. Again, another, I think, strong, smart change that college basketball is making for the transfer portal window in this sport. Took a couple of years, but hey, at least we're in a spot now that feels better. We'll see how it goes this offseason. I'm sure we'll have recaps on it as we get into the spring and early part of the summer. Only one game of note on Thursday to preview here. Gonzaga going on the road to take on Washington State in Pullman. This game is at 10 Eastern time on the CBS Sports Network. Gonzaga favored at FanDuel by 17.5 points. Again, this is a WCC game, as both Oregon State and Washington State are in the WCC for this season before they rebuild the new look Pac-12 alongside Gonzaga as well as Texas State, and then the 5 Mountain West defectors, Fresno State, Colorado State, San Diego State, Boise State, and Utah State all joining the Pac-12 as well. So this game is going to be it's one of the few games Gonzaga's playing where it's not like their last game playing these teams on the road. Like they played San Diego on the road, they're probably never going to play at the Jenny Craig Pavilion again. The next time they play Portland at the Chiles Center, they're probably never going to play Portland at the Chiles Center again. But they're playing at the Beasley Coliseum on Thursday night. in Pullman. They will continue to play that game as they will be in the conference with them going forward. Washington State coming off a close loss to St. Mary's. Freshman Ace Glass, another freshman guard that's been very good. Certainly not quite on the Okorie level, but Ace Glass averaging 16 points for Washington State. He hung 40 on Arizona State in the Maui Invitational. Definitely a young man to keep an eye on, although I don't think Wazoo has enough horses behind him to pick up a W over the Zags, who are 5-0 in conference play and 17-1 overall. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Isaac and I will be back with you all on Friday to get you ready for a fun weekend of college basketball action. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family, even if Purdue picked up the win. Let's go Wild Popes. Very easy to cheer for them tonight. Cheers to the McBruins, and until next time, peace out.